Helen Grant became a nurse to save lives. 20 years ago, she held her first patient's hand as he died. Stage 4 cancer. Begging for the pain to stop, she gave him morphine. Followed doctor's orders. Watched him suffer for 6 more hours before his heart finally stopped. That night, Helen made a promise. No one under her care would suffer like that again. At Mercy Grove Nursing Home, Helen works the night shift. 3rd floor, terminal care wing. The patients the world has forgotten. The ones waiting to die. Helen gives them peace. A gentle touch. A soft voice. An extra dose when no one's watching. She calls it mercy. The families call it a blessing. But tonight, someone calls it murder. Marcus Webb arrives at midnight with a notebook full of dates. 47 deaths. All under Helen's care. All peaceful. All painless. All suspicious. In a place where death is expected. How do you prove someone's helping it along? Welcome to Mercy Grove, where the kindest nurses might be the most dangerous. Helen Grant became a nurse to save lives. 20 years ago, she held her first patient's hand as he died. Stage 4 cancer. Begging for the pain to stop, she gave him morphine. Followed doctor's orders. Watched him suffer for 6 more hours before his heart finally stopped. That night, Helen made a promise. No one under her care would suffer like that again. Mercy Grove Nursing Home sat on the edge of the city, like a place people went to be forgotten. 3 stories of pale brick and fluorescent lighting. The kind of building that smelled like antiseptic and defeat. 3rd floor was terminal care. 22 beds. 22 patients who weren't going home. Helen Grant had worked the night shift there for 15 years. 42 years old. Never married. No children. Nursing was her life. Her patients were her family. She arrived at 10 p.m. every night. Same routine for 15 years. Changed into white scrubs. Tied her graying hair back. Checked the medication cart. Read the charts. Tonight was no different. Room 301. Margaret Chun, 87. Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. 2 weeks, maybe 3. Pain level. 8 out of 10, even with medication. Room 304. Robert Martinez, 79. Alzheimer's advanced. Didn't recognize his own children anymore. Agitated. Frightened. Constantly calling for his dead wife. Room 308. James Foster, 65. AOS. Couldn't move. Couldn't speak. Trapped in a body that had become his prison. His eyes screamed what his mouth couldn't. Helen read their charts with the same expression she always wore. Calm, professional, compassionate. But there was something else in her eyes. Something the other nurses didn't have. Peace, because Helen knew something they didn't. These patients wouldn't suffer much longer. She would make sure of it. Marcus Webb sat in his car outside Mercy Grove at 11:47 p.m. 34 years old. Data analyst. Lived his life in spreadsheets and patterns. And 3 weeks ago, his grandmother had died on the 3rd floor. Peaceful. Painless. Expected. The doctor said it was a blessing. The nurses said she went in her sleep. The family said it was God's mercy. But Marcus said it was suspicious. His grandmother, Dorothy Webb, had been admitted to Mercy Grove 6 months ago. Congestive heart failure. Terminal, but stable. The doctors said she had months, maybe a year. She died in 3 weeks. Marcus had requested her medical records, studied them, then requested records of other patients who died on the 3rd floor in the past year. The hospital resisted. Privacy laws. Family consent needed. But Marcus was good at data, and he was very good at finding patterns in public records. Obituaries, death certificates, admission dates. What he found made him sick. 47 deaths in 15 years. All on the 3rd floor. All under the care of Helen Grant. All between 2 and 4 a.m. All ruled natural causes. 47 patients. Average expected survival time, 8 months. Average actual survival time under Helen's care, 6 weeks. The pattern was clear. The deaths were too consistent, too peaceful, too convenient. Someone was helping these patients die, and Marcus was going to prove it. Helen made her rounds at midnight, room by room, patient by patient. Room 301. Margaret moaned softly. Pain medication wasn't working anymore. It never did at the end. Helen checked the morphine drip. Standard dose. Not enough. Hurts, Margaret whispered. Please, it hurts. Helen squeezed her hand. I know, sweetheart. I know. Margaret's daughter had visited that afternoon. Cried. Begged the doctors to do something. But there was nothing to do. Palliative care only. Manage the pain. Wait for the end. But why wait? Helen thought. Why let her suffer? She looked at Margaret's chart. DNR. Do not resuscitate. Advanced directive. No heroic measures. Margaret had already decided she was ready to go. Helen could help her get there. Room 304. Robert Martinez was agitated again, calling for Maria, his wife, dead 10 years. Maria! Maria! Where are you? I can't find you. The night orderly had strapped him to the bed. For his safety, they said. So he wouldn't wander, wouldn't fall. But Robert wasn't seeing Mercy Grove. He was seeing somewhere else. Sometime else. Lost in a mind that had betrayed him. Helen gave him a sedative. Standard procedure. But she also gave him something else. Something to quiet the fear permanently. He'd be with Maria by morning. Room 308. James Foster stared at the ceiling. He couldn't blink on his own anymore. Someone had to do it for him. His eyes watered constantly. Helen stood at his bedside, looked into those eyes, saw the question there. Please. James couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't even kill himself. But his eyes begged, and Helen had learned to read that language. I know, she whispered. I'll take care of you. Marcus entered Mercy Grove at 12:30 a.m. Visiting hours were long over, but he'd told the front desk he was Dorothy Webb's grandson, come to collect her belongings. They believed him, gave him a visitor badge, told him 3rd floor. Marcus took the elevator up. The hallway was dim, quiet. Only 2 nurses on duty, one at the station, one making rounds. Helen Grant. Marcus had studied her photo from the nursing home website. Recognized her immediately. White scrubs, gray hair in a bun, soft-soled shoes, moving silently from room to room. He followed at a distance, watched her enter room 301. Stay 7 minutes. Exit. Enter room 304. Stay 5 minutes. Exit. Enter room 308. Stay 12 minutes. Each time, she carried the medication cart. Each time, she checked charts. Each time, she did something the security cameras couldn't see. Marcus found an empty room, 315, recently vacated, and waited. At 1:47 a.m., he heard it. Code blue. Room 304. Robert Martinez had stopped breathing. Staff rushed. Dr. Simmons arrived. Checked vitals. Declared time of death. 1:52 a.m. Helen stood in the corner. Face neutral. Professional. But Marcus saw something else. She wasn't surprised. At 3:15 a.m., Helen was alone at the nurse's station, updating charts, filing paperwork. Marcus approached. Nurse Grant. She looked up. Calm. Professional smile. Can I help you? My name is Marcus Webb. Dorothy Webb was my grandmother. Helen's expression softened. Oh, Marcus. Yes, I remember Dorothy. I'm so sorry for your loss. She was a wonderful woman. She died 3 weeks after admission. Yes. Helen nodded sympathetically. Sometimes the body decides its time. We did everything we could to keep her comfortable. Comfortable? Marcus repeated. Is that what you call it? Helen's smile didn't waver. I'm not sure I understand. Marcus pulled out his notebook, set it on the desk between them. 47 patients, 15 years, all died under your care, all between 2 and 4 a.m., all ruled natural causes. Helen looked at the notebook, then at Marcus. Her expression didn't change. "This is a terminal care ward, Mr. Webb. People come here to die. That's the nature of hospice." "Not this fast," Marcus said. "Average survival time for patients like my grandmother. 8 months. Under your care, 6 weeks. Every patient is different. Not this different." Marcus leaned forward. "You're killing them." Silence. Helen stood slowly. "Mr. Webb, I think you should leave. I think I should call the police." "And tell them what?" Helen's voice remained calm. "That a hospice nurse's patients die? That terminal patients pass away peacefully in the night? There's no crime here. There is if you're helping them along." Helen looked at Marcus for a long moment. Then she said something that changed everything. "Would that be so wrong?" Helen didn't deny it, didn't defend it. She simply asked the question. "Margaret Chun in room 301, Helen said quietly. "Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Pain so severe the morphine barely touches it. She begs to die every night. But the doctors won't increase her medication. Protocol, they say. So she suffers." Marcus said nothing. "Robert Martinez in room 304, Helen continued. "His mind is gone. He doesn't know where he is. Doesn't know who he is. Spends every waking moment terrified, calling for a wife who's been dead for 10 years. His family visits once a month and cries, but they won't make the decision to let him go." Helen's voice was steady, not defensive, just factual. "James Foster in room 308, ALS, completely paralyzed. Can't speak, can't move, can't even blink. But his mind is intact. And every day, he begs with his eyes. Please, let me go." She looked at Marcus. "I give them what they want, what they deserve, what their families are too afraid to give them. Peace." Marcus stared at her. "You're playing God." "No," Helen said. "God abandoned these people. I'm just cleaning up after him. That's murder. That's mercy." Helen picked up a chart. Margaret Chen's. Showed it to Marcus. "She'll die tomorrow. Maybe the next day. After weeks more of agony. Or I can give her extra morphine tonight. She'll fall asleep. Won't wake up. Painless. Peaceful." She looked at Marcus. "Which is more cruel? Letting her suffer? Or helping her go?" Marcus's hand shook. "You can't make that choice. Someone has to." Marcus sat in the empty break room at 4 a.m. Helen sat across from him. 2 cold cups of coffee between them. "How long?" Marcus asked. 15 years, Helen said. "Since I started here. 47 people. 47 people who were suffering, who wanted to die, who couldn't do it themselves. And you just decided you had the right?" Helen was quiet for a moment. Then, 20 years ago, I held a man's hand while he died. Cancer. He begged me to help him. "Please," he said. "I can't take it anymore. Please." She looked at her hands. I followed protocol. Gave him his prescribed dose. Watched him suffer for hours. When he finally died, his face was still twisted in pain. Helen's voice cracked slightly. "That night, I promised myself, never again. No one under my care would suffer like that." Marcus wanted to be angry, wanted to call her a monster. But all he saw was a tired woman who thought she was doing the right thing. "My grandmother," Marcus said quietly. "She didn't want to die. She was still fighting." Helen met his eyes. "I know." Silence. "Dorothy wasn't in pain," Helen said. "She wasn't suffering. But she was scared. Scared of what was coming. The slow decline. The loss of dignity. The burden on her family." She paused. "The night before she died, she asked me, 'Is this how it ends?' Slow and pathetic." I told her, "It doesn't have to be." Marcus felt sick. "She didn't ask you to kill her." "No," Helen admitted. "But she asked me not to let her suffer. And I kept that promise. By murdering her. By giving her peace." Marcus stood. Paced. "I should report you. You'd go to prison. I know. You'd lose everything. I know. Why are you telling me this?" Helen looked at him. Because you asked. And because I'm tired. She stood, walked to the window. Dawn was breaking outside. 15 years, Helen said. 47 people. Every single one. I told myself, this is mercy. This is kindness. This is love. She turned to Marcus. But maybe you're right. Maybe it's murder. Maybe I've been lying to myself. She held out her hands, wrists together. So call the police. Turn me in. I won't fight it. Marcus stared at her. At this woman who killed with kindness, who murdered with mercy. And he had to decide. Was she a monster? Or was she the only person brave enough to do what no one else would? At 6:30 a.m., the day shift arrived. Helen clocked out. Mark was gone. She walked to her car in the parking lot. Waited. No police cars. No sirens. He hadn't called. Helen drove home. Small apartment. Lived alone. Always had. She sat on her couch and cried for the first time in 15 years. Not because she was caught, but because for the first time, someone had asked her the question she'd been avoiding. Am I the villain? 3 days later, Dr. Richard Simmons, Mercy Grove's chief physician, received an anonymous envelope. Inside, a notebook. 47 names. 47 dates. 47 deaths. All under Helen Grant's care. Dr. Simmons studied the data, called the hospital administrator, contacted the state medical board. Within a week, an investigation was opened. Helen was placed on administrative leave, pending review. The families were notified. Some were shocked. Others weren't. I always thought she was too kind, one daughter said. Too perfect. Marcus Webb was interviewed, asked what he knew. He told the truth. My grandmother died under her care. The timing was suspicious. I brought my concerns to hospital administration. He didn't mention the conversation at 4 a.m. Didn't mention Helen's confession, because that would mean admitting he'd known for 3 days and done nothing. 6 months later, Helen Grant stood in court. The medical examiner had exhumed 5 bodies, found elevated morphine levels in 3, inconclusive in 2, not enough for murder charges. Medical dosing records had been destroyed. Witnesses limited. Reasonable doubt everywhere, but enough for involuntary manslaughter. Professional negligence. Practicing medicine without authorization. Helen pled guilty to 3 counts. The prosecutor asked for 15 years. The defense argued compassion. 20 years of dedicated service. Terminal patients. End-of-life care. Families testified. Some called her a murderer. Others called her an angel. She helped my mother die with dignity. One woman said, I'll never forget that kindness. The judge sentenced Helen Grant to 8 years in prison, eligible for parole in 4. As they led her away, Helen looked into the courtroom gallery, found Marcus Webb sitting in the back row. Their eyes met. He nodded once. Not forgiveness, not condemnation, just acknowledgement. Some questions don't have answers. Helen Grant served 3 years in prison, released early for good behavior. She never worked as a nurse again. Couldn't. License revoked permanently. She took a job at a bookstore. Lived quietly. Sometimes, former families would recognize her. Some would turn away. Others would approach. Thank you, they'd whisper, for what you did for my father. Helen never knew how to respond. Marcus Webb visited Mercy Grove once more. His grandmother's room, now occupied by someone new. Someone else waiting to die. The new night nurse was young, efficient, professional. She followed protocol exactly. Marcus heard a patient crying in pain down the hall, begging for relief. The nurse checked her chart. I'm sorry, I can't give you more. It's not time yet. The patient sobbed. Marcus left. He never came back, because he realized something that night. Sometimes mercy looks like murder. Sometimes murder looks like mercy. And sometimes the kindest thing you can do is let someone else decide which is which. At Mercy Grove Nursing Home, 3rd floor, terminal care wing, patients still die in the night. But now they suffer first. because the angel who gave them peace is gone.